So I got to manage basically a lot of these interesting people who I used to look up to.
What do you like about combat sports?
It is very much like entrepreneurship. You are basically, it's all you, and you have nobody to blame. If you fail, it's on you. If you succeed, it's on you. It's basically a fight.
Going back to Mike Tyson's quotes, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that's so true. Like, we all want to present ourselves in the best light, but so much of the environment that we're in is out of our control. So what do you do when it's raining?
People always say don't quit, which is fine. Don't quit too prematurely. But once you realize that there is something that it just doesn't make sense for you to do anymore, then it's okay to pivot. Like, that's who we are as humans. The power of social media is, there's nothing like it at this point. And if you're not on board, you got to jump on board and really start doubling down, regardless of the business that you're in. One thing that I just wish anybody could take away from this podcast is there's no such thing as safety.
Gary, thanks for coming on the show. Could you please tell us how you got to where you are?
Yes. So thank you so much for having me, by the way. So basically, I started out, graduated high school with a 2.1 GPA, never really found my place in the world, always trying to figure out what is it that I'm going to do. I see so many people going into, the automotive industry. So many people are work with blue collar work, or they work in finance. And I never found that one thing that really stuck with me. And then when I got into college, I stumbled upon social media marketing through me actually becoming a personal trainer to earn some extra money. And then I was like, wow, I actually really enjoy posting on social media. Like, that is something that I do, and it's something I really enjoy. And it was around the 2016, I believe. So here I am promoting my services, my fitness services. I started to take on free internships. And I know that this is kind of like become a topic of discussion of like, oh, nobody should have free internships. Everybody should be paid. For me, that's honestly what has built my career. So I started to get free internships. I'm a big MMA fan. That's like about the only sport that I watch. So I'm a big UFC fan. And there was a company called the World Series of Fighting, or Professional Fighters League now. It's a very big MMA organization. I'd probably say, the second biggest organization aside from the UFC. So I started interning with them. Then eventually I kind of tried out a few jobs after I got out of college, and then ended up actually working at Manhattanville College, where I managed the entire department, the entire school. I managed all their content. And so after that, I got furloughed because COVID hit. And so, but I really did a great job with them, and I really built some amazing relationships. And I needed a fresh start. When COVID hit, everything was closed. And so I, by the grace of God, got an opportunity to move to Los Angeles to basically be Mike Tyson's right-hand man and manage 𝐷𝐿 Podcast. So I managed 𝐷𝐿 Podcast. I managed this guy, 𝐵𝐺ary, who's a comedian with like 2 million followers or so on Instagram just alone. Then I also worked on Brendan Schaub's show, he's a really big MMA podcaster. He's kind of was a UFC fighter, then turned podcaster. So I got to manage basically a lot of these interesting people who I used to look up to. And it's funny because one time I remember in 8th grade, I put down, like, where do I want to live? Like, I really want to move to Los Angeles because I felt that's where all the stars and celebrities were. Anyway, so after I got done with that, I spent about close to 2 years there. I moved to Texas, where I'm actually at now. I was working for a YouTuber with 6 million subscribers in politics, and it was great. I just was starting to build out my life, and then I got a little bit antsy. And so after about 2 years there, I decided to take a leap of faith and just, leave a very, very nice paying job, a very safe job. And I just decided to move to a country called Cyprus. And I moved to Cyprus basically because I have a Latvian passport, so I'm Russian, and I have a U.S. passport. But I basically moved out there to kind of try to figure out my life and move somewhere a little bit cheaper and really just game plan the next step in my life. Before I started to create YouTube videos, and then things started to kind of slowly roll in, and I started to basically get opportunities to manage social media because obviously of my background, for really high level people. And so people started to reach out, and I said, you know what, we're going to double down and build an agency. And so that's kind of what we've been doing, what I've been doing for the past 6 months. And I also partnered with Cronus, where I'm their celebrity social media director, basically managing all our high profile clients. So basically I have my own agency, and I work with Cronus, and we work together. So it's really, really exciting stuff. And here I am now navigating the waters as a 28-year-old young man who's trying to figure out entrepreneurship.
What's it like shaking Mike Tyson's hand?
Oh, it was great. It was fantastic. Not only shaking his hand, but honestly, getting to like picture or getting to get little nuggets of information from him. I mean, he has so much life. He's been through so many things, right? And he's one of the most famous people on the planet, especially if you like, growing up in the 1990s, and he was that guy, right? It was really really cool, really really cool.
Yeah, he is like a Greek god or something, like a mythical figure. And his life is so interesting. It's like several movies. You could make a life about his upbringing alone. There, you could make another movie about, um, his boxing career, both kind of eras of it. And then he became something of like a philosopher in the current phase. And I saw that some interviews with Werner Herzog as a movie director and this really interesting guy, and he's fascinated by Mike Tyson. He's like, how do you know all this stuff? And I like the path less traveled, and I think Mike Tyson is certainly on a path of his own.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And honestly, it was really cool to see basically how people worshipped him. Essentially, like he was very humble behind the scenes. He was very kind of like. It's actually funny because some of the lower like celebrities, lower on the list tier celebrities, were actually a little bit more bougie than he was, and he was very humble. And so, but it was just really cool to see how people like kind of really gravitated towards him and always told him how, or they always told him how he ended up changing their life for one way or another, whether it was through boxing, whether it was through his podcasts, and obviously now he's got a massive fight with Jake Paul coming up in Dallas, Texas. Jake Paul is interesting because he's built a really amazing career like through YouTube. I mean, I know this, what you talk about a lot and what you're passionate about is entrepreneurship, but I mean, if you want to look at any entrepreneur, Jake Paul is a really great example of that. He started out making videos at a time when YouTube was kind of just beginning, right? He started with Vine and with his brother, a platform that no longer exists. And now I just saw one of his latest YouTube videos. He bought a $20 million house. So it's just really funny, the power of social media, getting in early and captivating that audience. So
Now you mentioned getting in early, and that's for people that are like, oh, I missed my timing. What would you say to that?
I think the best time to start was yesterday, and the second best time to start is today. I think for anything, yeah, when it comes down to anything, right? Any sort of hobby, any sort of whatever career that you're going into, you do wish that you started earlier. But if you don't have that opportunity, then let's start today.
You mentioned the UFC and combat sports being like one of, if not the only kind of sport that you watch these days. What do you like about combat sports?
I like that it is very much like entrepreneurship. It's very much like the free market. You are basically, it's all you. You have nobody to blame. If you fail, it's on you. If you succeed, it's on you. And now that I'm navigating the waters of entrepreneurship, it's basically a fight. It really is. And I think the reason why I'm so successful in my career at a young age, especially even though there's many people that had better grades than me growing up, is because I got put into mixed martial arts early as a kid. Because it taught me resilience. It taught me basically, to never give up, to keep going. And basically, when the odds are stacked against you, you just have to keep rolling with the punches. And aside from just the training aspect, but as far as the UFC and what it's done and combat sports as a whole, I think it's a great metaphor for life. But I also believe that this sport has just become so big, and it's really exciting to see because I was involved in mixed martial arts when it wasn't even that cool. When like you were kind of the weird kid in school when people are like, oh wow, he doesn't watch baseball, he doesn't watch football, he just likes to watch two dudes fight in an octagon. It's kind of weird. And now it's become a mainstream sport, and there's so much money there to be made, and there's so many cool organizations coming out. Like I'm working with one organization now, one of my clients. They're coming out with this organization called Dirty Boxing Championship, and it's basically boxing with elbows and ground and pound. It's really like people are trying different things and trying to make these sports very very exciting, and there's a marketplace there because people constantly want content, and I don't think I just think that it's an exciting time to be involved in combat sports.
Yeah, I like it for I think similar reasons. I tend to apply entrepreneurship to everything. I think like the immigrant journey is entrepreneurship, life is entrepreneurship, and certainly a literal fight could have a lot of similarities too. Going back to Mike Tyson's quotes, that one where he says everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and that's so true. Like we all want to present ourselves in the best light, but so much of the environment that we're in is out of our control. So what do you do when it's raining? Or what do you do when you don't get funding? Or what do you do when a competitor outperforms you in some metric? You have to adapt and you have to have resilience, and you don't know how far you can go until you're pushed. And usually we can't push ourselves. That's why there's like personal trainers at the gym and stuff. And, so if you are in that moment in a ring, I think, was it 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄 and Dustin Poirier? And that was like the first time in, I guess, recent memory where Islam kind of got pulled into deep water, and Khabib was telling them, like, this is it. This is the moment. Like, you're going to discover that you have another gear that you weren't using. And you don't know that until you're pushed there. And that's, I think, the bonding element of your adversary in that is that you can take each other further. It's like progressing each other's lives, but also the greater like human family, and discovering like, wow, that's like elite athletes. They show you what's possible, but it's not possible without competition. And I think what a lot of people at first might miss is that there's actually a lot of camaraderie in the combat sports, and there's a lot of respect. And I like the honesty of it. Like you said, it's all there in the ring, like no one to blame. And then the interesting contradiction there is it's actually you need other people at the same time. It's all about you, but you also have to kind of let go and work with the team. And it takes a lot of people kind of bringing out that top performance. So yeah, there's just a lot of lessons that I think you can apply to life or entrepreneurship. So I agree with you. It's a great sport to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's only getting bigger. So it's an exciting time. Yeah, like you mentioned, like fighters have that heart, and I think that's why a lot of them translate so well into business afterwards. There's a lot of fighters that don't, right? There's a lot of fighters that basically it's kind of a ruthless sport, right? At the end of it, you kind of just leave and there's CTE and all that stuff. But there's a lot of fighters, Brendan Schaub being one of them, that I worked with that really translated very nicely into the business world because he had that dedication, because he had that same kind of hunger and drive that he once had for competing for in the heavyweight division that he now has in business. So it's really cool.
And speaking of others, I think it took Joe Rogan's intervention to get him out of combat sports, recognizing like now's the time to get out. And that can be kind of tough. Like, we're not all going to like be heavyweight champion or whatever. And so knowing when to pivot is helpful, having other people's input there.
That's a great point that you actually bring up. Pivoting is like really, really, and like not talked about enough because, the people always say don't quit and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. Don't quit too prematurely. But once you realize that there is something that it just doesn't make sense for you to do anymore, then it's okay to pivot. Like that's who we are as humans. We evolve. We have different interests. We try different things. I went from working at a college to working on a combat sports show, multiple combat sports shows, to then working in politics, to then trying to launch my own, now launching my own, becoming an entrepreneur. Like, it's okay to have all these new, different aspirations and try different things. That's part of being a human. I think the worst part about it, I think the worst part is to not try these things, right? Is to basically be stuck in your same bubble, in your same place, and basically say, you know what, I'm an accountant. I've always been an accountant, and I don't want to do anything else. That to me is a tragedy.
Yeah, I agree. What is it? The biggest regret are the things you didn't try rather than the things you tried and didn't succeed at. Because oftentimes I think even if you try and don't succeed, you actually still win in terms of knowledge. So you might have figured out where to pivot. You might have learned what not to do. You might have made an unexpected connection. So yeah, it's always better to act, I think, than not act.
And I think one of the best things that I've done, and this is my advice to basically anybody that's looking to become an entrepreneur, especially, my age, like if I had to give myself, my younger self advice, it would be to follow the same path that I did. It's basically work for somebody else, make them a ton of money, provide a ton of value, get really good at the business, basically know all the inside, outside, basically all the tricks of the trade, how things operate, and then eventually go out and do it for yourself. To me, that was the right move to do, as opposed to kind of trying to figure out everything for yourself. So,
yeah, great advice. Talk to me about pivoting countries. What's that like? Because it seems like you go for a season and then you've gone somewhere else. But do you have, I guess, two parts you could take either side first? Is there like an adjustment phase, or is it these days? Is it pretty much as long as you have internet, you're good to go? And also, would you want to live somewhere longer term, or do you think 3 months is a good amount of time?
So I basically left very comfy life here in Texas. Uh, Air conditioning, microwave, everything that you could want. As Americans, we take for granted a lot of the things that we have. And I mean, I've always known how lucky we are to be American and to have the things that we do have. But once you go to a different country, especially countries like an island, like in Cyprus, for example, that when I lived there for 6 months. Well, 5 months. I lived in London for a month, but even London didn't have AC. So it's just very interesting some of the things that we kind of the little differences that we have. Also, so basically, when I moved to Cyprus, it was an adjustment period. I mean, you didn't have the same commodities that you had in the United States. Places are a little bit smaller. Basically, anywhere in Europe, they're smaller. You can't leave the lights on for as long, right? Because things are more expensive, or at least energy is expensive. But it was cool. It was interesting being in a different country. Cyprus is interesting because it's half Greek and the other side is Turkish. So basically, you could kind of go into the different parts. You can stay in the Greek side, or you can walk over past that line and basically go into the Turkish side. Things were a lot cheaper there. You could basically live like a king in Europe, in many places in Europe for around, I would say, 2.5 thousand, 3,000. Like 3,000, it's hard to spend that money because you would have to really upgrade your lifestyle. But as long as you have Wi-Fi, you're going to be in a good place. I mean, for me, it was really hot out there, but I was used to it because of the Texas heat. But I used to walk like half a mile with groceries in my hand and basically, just walk from the grocery store back to the house. So there was little things like that. But overall, it was a humbling way to live. I lived near a military base, so I lived basically right on the military base, right on the Cyprus military base. And yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for the opportunity because it allowed me to have clarity. It allowed me to decide what I wanted to do next. And I encourage anybody to go out and try living somewhere else. I think you'll appreciate living in the United States a lot more after that, and in the freedoms that we have here when comparing to different countries.
Yeah, I think it's great to go kind of back and forth wherever that may be, because you'll probably discover some things you'd like to change, and you'd probably discover some things you'd like to keep. You maybe took for granted. It's like, oh, I actually really appreciate that, and I never knew that there were options.
One thing I will say, the food in Europe is just the quality is just so incredible. I mean, when I got back here, that's one thing that I'm like, man, not everything needs to be, about money. Like some things we just need to have. But anyway, maybe that's a conversation for another day. But I'm just the food quality is a lot higher out there. What's interesting is when I was in Limassol, you see a lot. Limassol is a city in Cyprus. There's a lot of successful people out there. There's a lot of businesses coming, especially Russia. People coming from Russia, and that was really interesting. So there was a lot of diversity, at least in that city. You wouldn't think so, and a lot of people went to Cyprus for tax benefits and stuff like that. But overall, it's a beautiful country. But London was very expensive. So
Did you say you were Latvian?
yes, so I was born in Latvia. I moved to the United States when I was 3, but I speak fluent Russian. So the way Latvia is split up is half Russian, half Latvian.
Okay. And do you have a passport for Latvia?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So that's how I was able to live basically anywhere in Europe for as long as I want.
Nice. What color is the passport?
It's red. It's red.
Yeah, I noticed some are there's like green, red, blue. Is there brown?
I believe so. I'm not exactly sure.
I kind
But
of want to collect all the colors. It's like a game. I've got two blue ones. It's like, oh, this isn't different enough. I need a different color.
have you been outside of the states? Any
I
country?
lived in Asia for a while, but I'm not like I don't have a passport there. As a matter of fact, I think most East Asian countries don't allow for multiple, at least openly. But Europe obviously does. I think South America as well. So there's room to grow.
Absolutely.
So where would you like to go next?
I'm happy staying here. It's a lot cheaper. It's a lot more affordable than, for example, New York is, or Greenwich, Connecticut, where I'm originally from. A lot of my friends stayed in the hometown, which is fine, but it's just very expensive. Like it's a very like to live in New York, you need to make $5,000 for just a small 1 bedroom, or something like that. 4,000 for a 1 bedroom. It just gets expensive. In Dallas here, I live very very nicely. For 1,600, and basically all my work is remote. but I don't want to go anywhere right now. I've kind of traveled enough. I've been to Turkey just now, and so I'm very happy with staying in the U.S. for quite some time.
I spoke with a PR consultant recently, and we talked about kind of the personal brand these days, storytelling, the importance of like framing certain narratives, mostly in a personal kind of like a solopreneur, entrepreneur type way, but also how companies do this. And then, of course, countries also do this. With your expertise with managing celebrity social media profiles, what do you see or that we like us little people can use in terms of storytelling and positioning ourselves as perhaps thought leaders or the go-to person in our industry?
I love that question. So basically, one thing that anybody can do is start documenting their journey. I mean, a lot of people don't know what it is that they want to post, or what it is that they should say, or if people would listen. But if you just start documenting your journey, what are some of the things that you're doing right now? And I think giving some advice to yourself 6 months ago is a great place to start. So those two things. So basically, documenting and giving advice to your 6 month ago self, and basically just talking about some of the things that you wish you would have learned, and giving any tips and tricks and things that you can kind of talk about, and just showing up consistently every single day. I think that those few things, and then also picking out, what platforms do you really want to post on, right? So LinkedIn is obviously a great one. To be honest, LinkedIn is my favorite platform because I think that there's just so much potential there. I really like TikTok, I really do, and YouTube is the best for long form and for actually building a long-term personal brand. So I use TikTok and I use LinkedIn for basically funneling to my business and basically putting out social media tips and content like that, and speaking to my target demo, which I think, what you would have to figure out what business would work for, the audience that's watching right now. Figure out what platforms is your ideal target demo on, and then start creating content there. And then ultimately you'll want to create a YouTube channel down the line once you start getting better and better with content.
Noted. Are there any, I guess, celebrities or business people out there that you look to as kind of the benchmark for managing an excellent brand?
That's a good point. I don't know. I wouldn't say there's a celebrity out there, but I would say that the celebrities that do the best are ones that build the most trust with their audience and show up every single day. There's one actually is really interesting, Jason Derulo. I don't even know if I follow him, but every time I see his content, he's got really just phenomenal content. That's somebody that I just took note of, and I'm like, man, that guy really knows what he's doing. I mean, he kind of came out with some songs back in, I don't know, 2010, 2012 that kind of were good, and I thought he kind of died off. But then once TikTok showed up, and Instagram and all these other platforms, he just really just took off and doubled down into social media. So maybe that's one person. But I really like Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor's doing a lot. I mean, he's really elevated his brand, and he has more followers than the president does. And basically, what he's doing is he's signing deals with a company called Bucked Up, which is an energy drink company. He just signed a deal with BKFC. He's got his own whiskey, and he's using his social platforms to promote that. And so I think that's really interesting. And the power of social media is obviously just, there's nothing like it at this point. And if you're not on board, you got to jump on board and really start doubling down, regardless of the business that you're in.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the most successful ones are the ones that build trust. Two-part question, I guess. How do you build trust, and how do you break trust?
So you build trust by basically showing up every single day and being genuine and authentic to your audience, right? So basically, you and I are having a conversation right now. You could tell, am I genuine? Am I not? Am I trustworthy? And if you just show up every single day, eventually the people that like you will continue to like you, and the people, or at least they'll keep finding you, right? And the people that don't like you, well, that's fine. Not everybody has to like you, and that's completely okay. But the more people that you can get to vibe with you, to listen to the words that you have to say, and just see your lifestyle and say, you know what, this person's really interesting. He's earned my follow, or she's earned my follow. I want to learn more about them. And then they kind of get a sneak peek into your life because you're being authentic. You're showing up as yourself. You're not pretending to be anybody else. And you're showing up consistently and providing some sort of value, whether that's being funny and entertaining content, whether that's educational and they learn something from you, or that's motivational and inspiring.
How do you keep up to date? It seems like the algorithms are always changing. There's new tools coming out, and with you kind of staying at the forefront, how do you like get your information or stay sharp?
One of the most important things to do is follow big and small accounts in your industry. So take a look at who's doing things well, take a look at who's up and coming, and basically see what kind of tips and tricks that they're doing and implementing, right? So basically, if they're starting to double, triple down on carousel posts on photos, think about why are they doing that, right? So start looking into that. Follow news articles that are coming out with maybe algorithm changes, or there's a guy named Mosseri, I believe. He's the Instagram algorithm kind of god. He's the person that is in charge of it. He's a great person to follow on Instagram because he kind of tells you the things that are going to happen before they actually happen. Or he basically came out with an update that said Instagram is prioritizing shares over everything. So now you know, okay, so I need to create share-worthy content. If I don't create share-worthy content, then I'm not going to grow. And so these little things, right? So following big and small creators, following news articles and making sure that you're staying up to date on that, and then following key people within the apps themselves, right? People that are in charge of big changes.
Okay. You are currently at Kronos Communications and Frayter Media at the same time, and it seems like there's some overlap there, at least some they could complement one another. Could you talk to us about what's different between the two roles?
Yeah, absolutely. So for let's say Freighter Media, we have some different clients where we specialize, for example, in podcasting, and we have a big MMA podcast that we're working with right now with Platinum Mike Perry, who's the BKFC champion right now. So basically, we'll work with clients like that, and then with Kronos, we really specialize in like CEOs, executives, founders, and so there's some overlap there where I'm responsible for all of the social media content and basically making sure that the executives, the CEOs, the founders that we have are growing, and we have a really great thing because so many people need PR and they need social media, and so we work together and provide those services. And I'm really happy. I mean, Adrian, who runs Kronos, is incredible. I mean, she is one of the. I've worked for PR agencies in the past, and I think Kronos does it incredibly well with the attention to detail, with the fact that we're always on. There's never. It's a 24/7 job. Social media, right. PR, and basically entrepreneurship as a whole. It's so funny. One thing I wanted to just mention, and I think you can relate to this, is basically there's so many people out there that are like, I want to be my own boss so that not only nobody can tell me what to do, but I can work less hours and make more money. It's like, that's not the case. So you're basically leaving a 9 to 5 to now work 24 hours for yourself. So it's just funny.
Yeah, I say something similar where it's like, just make sure you love what you do because you're going to do more of it. And it's competitive out there, but if you enjoy it, you welcome the competition because that's all you be like. Again, going back to
and I think you're right. I think in some cases the marketplace is very competitive, but at the same time, I do think that if you do just slightly a little bit more work than everybody else, you are just going to stand out that much more. I do think that in some cases, I find that the standard has gotten a little bit lower in some places, and I do think that if you're just really hungry and you're really eager to just show the world what it is that you feel as though they need to see, show your expertise, and really just deliver to your clients. I don't think that they're going to leave you for anybody else. I really think that if you do it, as long as I've always been this type of guy that it's like, if you just give me one opportunity, I promise you that's all you're going to need. And I think that's important. I do think the marketplace is competitive, but I do think that if you really want it bad enough, I think that you can really stand out.
Well said. Yeah, I definitely didn't mean to convey that I was not optimistic about the growth possible, and that I think we can continue to grow the pie. And as far as showing up and treating your clients right, I do think that creates like kind of a bond, and then this tribe almost where you can, like you said, they won't trade you out for someone else as long as you help them. And I guess that too is something that I discovered, I guess, somewhat recently, is just if you boil it all down, it comes down to an exchange of value. That's all pretty much anything is. And sometimes we are like blinded by what we want, but we kind of haven't analyzed, I guess, what it is we're offering. And so if you can kind of combine the two or align the two, then I think it's more sustainable.
Absolutely. I think one of the best pieces of advice. So when I moved to Cyprus, I paid $10,000 for a course, and I was like, let's see what I'm going to get from this. So I paid this money, and it was incredible. It was by this guy Charlie Morgan. I found him on YouTube. It was a paid ad that got served to me, and they hooked me in, and they just sold me, and they did a good job. And after they sold me, I was like, man, hope this is worth it. And it was, because one of the things that I learned is that basically you have a client that needs something, right? A potential prospect, right? And then they have an end goal right here. So whatever it is, 10,000 followers, or they want to lose 50 pounds, whatever it is, whatever it is, right? You are basically the bridge to their problem. So or the bridge to their solution, right? So basically you're going to take them from that problem to that solution, and that is how you position your service. And I think that's actually probably the best way of coming off like not sleazy and actually just delivering a solution to people. So you're right. You basically just want to position yourself as that person that could provide that solution, that ease, that comfort, and show your client or your potential client that, hey, I'm the person that you need to go to in order to get this solved.
Yeah. You broke down kind of the Kronos and Frayter communications by celebrity versus CEO, executive, and you said there is some overlap there. Of course, there's some famous CEOs and some celebrities are CEOs of companies, etc. But is there like what is different about managing the social media brand, if you will, of an executive versus a celebrity or an athlete or something like that?
So that's interesting. I could tell you for executives, what we do, what I do, just to kind of give you a little inside scoop, is we meet once a week. My team does a deep dive, and myself, we do a deep dive into your industry. So we're going to take a look. For example, we have a tech client, right, in the AI space. So we'll basically be diving into everything related to what's going on that week. Whether it's Elon Musk put something out, Sam Altman, OpenAI, what is going on with AI agents. So we'll basically, kind of gather all that information. And then once a week we'll meet to basically, in an interview style kind of, format here, where we're basically like what you and I are doing now, where we sit down and I'm basically going to ask him questions. And I'm like, hey, what are your thoughts on OpenAI going for profit, right? And so then he provides me his answers. And then we take that footage for that hour, and then we cut it into clips. And then we'll try to match his tone in the copy with the way he spoke, with certain words. And then we also try to think of like what would the audience care about, right? So we have the top of funnel content, which is more there to drive people to his page, right? A little bit more broad. So for example, it's Elon Musk saying something about XAI, or maybe coming out with robots. Then the middle of the funnel will be related more to that target demo. It's like, what would they care about, right? Maybe the tech enthusiast, or just the people that are more like him, right? And that's our target demo. Then we have bottom funnel, and that's where we promote our product, and that's where we, essentially sell to those diehard fans now. So it kind of goes through that funnel. But yeah, like I said, so we record that content and then we put it out strategically throughout the week. So that is something that we do. For athletes, it's a little bit different, right? So for athletes, it's less about maybe educational content. It's more about, hey, what is it that I'm doing, right? So if you have a football player, you have a camera crew following him around, they kind of want to have a more of a glimpse into the day in the life, right? More nutrition, what is going on there? How's the team looking behind the scenes? Certain things like that. So there is a difference. But the easiest thing that any athlete or celebrity can do is have a podcast, because that is the best way for your social media manager to get consistent content. That is by far the easiest thing. And that is also a great way to grow, because people can get an inside look into who you actually are, aside from just day in the life and Instagram photos.
Sounds like a pretty exciting job you have, because you're learning so much. So for example, in your first example there, let's say it's what's going on in AI agents and something. If you're not like a deep expert in that, you've got to then go deep quickly into this ecosystem, understand it in order to communicate it, but then also have that kind of target where you want to get people down the funnel. So you're kind of doing two jobs at once, maybe more than two jobs at once.
I've become an expert in AI. That's what I tell everybody. Before this, I was like always kind of afraid or nervous about AI. I'm like, is AI coming to take my job? And now I just feel so empowered because I know about AI. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just going to use these programs to now elevate my content, my own content for my personal brand, as well as my clients. And so now that's one example. But yeah, you become an expert quick into things.
Do you have any like recommendations for tools that people could use?
Yeah, absolutely. So I use Perplexity for, like for basically uh, for like different type of searches. It's a little bit better in my opinion than like a ChatGPT. It's just a little different. I use 11 Labs for voiceovers, Mid Journey for thumbnail images. I use Opus Pro to cut short clips. Although I'll be honest, I don't think that AI can replace a video editor at all. Like I don't think it's even close right now. I think that like if you take a look at like an Opus Pro, it's okay, it's pretty good, like but it's hit or miss. Sometimes the clips are just like too wonky, and maybe they'll like cut half your face off. Claude I use, yeah, Runway is obviously a good one. So there's a lot, but yeah, those are a few. Oh, also Audio Enhancer, so that's a really great one that just kind of cleans up your audio. So honestly, AI, I think one thing that I've learned from some of my clients in the AI space is basically AI is not going to take or AI will only take your job if you don't use it to enhance your job. Like because AI, you always need somebody behind that, right, to kind of navigate where it's going to go. AI is an amazing tool. If you can master it, if you can at least get a good grasp on it, I think that's where the future is. And you know, what I'm doing is I'm at the forefront of that. Like I'm using AI every single day to try to elevate my content. I don't rely on it, but I use it to enhance it and spice things up.
One big change I'd say in the last 10 to 20 years was the shift away from the massive corporations, the Nike swoosh, and the big brands out there into personal brands, into having a face, having the CEO have a podcast or something like that. Do you kind of, I don't know, have some predictions for what the next change might be in, let's say, 10 years?
One thing I will say is it's much easier to build a personal brand than it is to build a business brand. It's quite difficult. Like if you notice, like any company, so any CEO that you go to on LinkedIn, you'll see that they put out more content more consistently, at least on their page than they do on their company page. For the most part, maybe like a big corporation, it's a little bit different. But in general, it's just easy because you have one person that you're looking at and you know what they're about, and you can kind of figure out whether you like them or not and want to follow them. Because now it's about earning followers. And before it was like, oh, I'll just follow you for no reason. But now it's like, what is this person providing me? That's what the audience member is thinking. And do you provide that thing for me that is going to like should I really actually follow you? But one thing I do think is AI influencers. I think that's going to be a massive thing because think about how long it takes for you and I to sit down right now. You had to get dressed, look nice, all that kind of stuff, and eventually, and then let's say you're shooting content, let's say after this, right? You have to script things out, and maybe you mess up, you have a bunch of takes. Now it's like you basically put an AI influencer, you clone yourself, and there's programs out there to do this already. Maybe they're in their early stages, but they're getting there very,
I
very
saw
fast.
Reid Hoffman like interviewed himself basically.
Right. And so basically, what you're going to be able to do is just clone yourself, put a script right in front of you, and it's going to read that script. You cut that into clips, and boom, now you just save 3 hours in your day. I mean, ultimately, that's what CEOs, that's why what high level people value more than money is time. And I think AI influencers will be able to provide that.
And what about your role? You're in two companies right now. Do you have some plans in the like near term, 1 to 3 years, let's say?
Yeah. So obviously, I'm very, very close with Cronus. I work with them every single day, and my goal is to build this thing as big as possible, build out my personal brand, continue to build out Cronus with Adrian, and make sure that we're as profitable and we're that go-to agency that people want to go to for either PR and social media because those things are so intertwined. And we want to work with the biggest stars on the planet. We want to work with the biggest podcasts, and we just want to do a good job. So we'll never take on somebody that I don't think that will be able to grow or that we don't think is a good fit. But I want to become, I want to become a really big thought leader in the social media space, the person that is the go-to person. I think I have the resume for that. I just think that I'm early on in the entrepreneurship phase, and it's going to take some time, so figuring things out, what works, what doesn't, and I think that all comes with time. But most importantly, I think it's just having the right mindset. That's what I've realized is because skills can be taught, but if you just have like a, this, you're just a never give up attitude and make sure that you're showing up every single day and taking responsibility, I think that, amazing things can happen. I think the universe or God, whoever you believe in, really rewards that.
Fully agree. You'd mentioned you lived in a few places, LA, New York, now you're in Texas, obviously Cyprus, etc. Um, what is the entrepreneurship like community like, where you are now? Do you see it as like growing? Are there like, could you just describe what the entrepreneurship scene is like in Texas where you're at?
In Dallas, you would be, I mean, at least I was surprised. I don't know if you'd be surprised, but just the fact that, like, if you type in CEO and just on LinkedIn in the search, you'll see a lot of CEOs moving to Dallas. Also, a lot of people in the tech space are moving to Texas as a whole. Like Austin, for example, it's become a hotbed. And the reason is because it's much more regulatory friendly than, for example, California. I mean, California just did veto an AI bill, but aside from that, it's really not fun to have a business out there. It's very, very strict. And I mean, ultimately, the market agrees with me because people are leaving and they're coming to Texas. And so, like I said, there's a lot less regulatory. There's no state income tax. It's just kind of a no-brainer. And there's a lot of financial services here. There's not as big of a content like place Dallas isn't. For a creative, there's still a lot of work to be done. Like there's still a lot of work to be done here. But overall, like in tech, finance, I'm seeing a lot of people moving to Dallas. Very, very high-level people to Dallas and Austin. But again, New York, LA are obviously still kind of the creative hubs.
Okay. Yeah. I like the fact that it's like spreading everywhere. And I think even like Tokyo is starting to introduce some changes with, they have like a 1 year like entrepreneurship kind of visa to help foreigners kind of come and start up companies there. And I used to live in Japan for a while, and I was happy to see that. I think the world over is skewing towards entrepreneurship and recognizing that it's good to just let people try things, and you'll kind of see what simmers to the top.
Yes, that's a very, very great point. And that's something that I was talking to my brother about. So we basically work together with Frayter Media. He's the COO. He basically handles all the operations. He just left his job at EY, Ernst & Young. We work together. And basically one thing that we've talked about is the fact that during COVID, I think a lot of a lot of companies realize that they can cut a quarter of their staff or half their staff, and they can still get a lot of productivity off of that and still, maintain just higher margins. Whether that's ethical or not, I'm not arguing that. But what I am saying is what the actual business is where things are going. So that's one thing that I'm realizing. So there's a lot of people that are laid off, and they realize, okay, social media is here. The internet kind of allows me to do to kind of start my own business like this, right? Like if I don't even need a product really to sell. Like I can just start creating content and then figure out the product later. Like there's ways to go about it. So that's one way, right? Also, I think that there's a lot of people, like myself included, that are hiring people based on contract roles. So, like, I don't necessarily need somebody full time. Like, I'll need somebody on a per project basis, right? Or to handle one certain client, right? And you pay X amount. And I think that that's where also the market is shifting too, where people are now becoming less in one company, and now they're kind of just becoming freelancers and they're working with multiple companies. And I think that but this is based on the people that I've talked to, that it's actually a lot more lucrative for them. They're making a lot more money by doing this. Yes, you don't have health insurance and there's certain things, there's that lack of safety maybe. But at the end of the day, one thing that I just wish anybody could take away from this podcast is there's no such thing as safety. There's no such thing as safety in entrepreneurship. That's risky. That's super risky. There's no such thing as safety in a 9 to 5. There's no such thing as safety, period. And I think that you just have to, it's kind of the way that I look at it is, what are you going to regret less, right? Are you going to regret not taking the jump? Because if that doesn't work out, if you take the jump and it doesn't work out, then you might regret leaving your 9 to 5. But if you stay in your 9 to 5, you might regret not taking the jump. So it's just what are you going to regret less?
Yeah, fully agree. So chronoscommunications.com is the website. It's a great website. Does Frayter Media have a website?
So right now everything is funneled through GaryFrayter.com. But again, like if there's anything that people want to take away or want to learn from our services, I would go to chronoscommunications.com. And at Cronus, we basically work again with CEOs, executives, high level individuals, high net worth individuals, and we provide PR services and marketing and social media marketing.
Great. And was there anything that we didn't touch on that you'd like to highlight regarding what you're doing, PR communications or entrepreneurship in general?
No, I think it's an interesting time. The only thing that I encourage is basically people to start building out their personal brand. I do think that that is something that is essentially recession proof, because I think that if you can build, regardless of what industry that you're in, if you can start just putting out content regularly, one post a day, and if you're a CEO and you don't want to work, or sorry, you don't want to hire, let's say, a social media manager, but you want your intern to help you, or you just want to start putting out posts one day at a time, I do think that that's probably the smart thing to do. You want to show your face out there. You want to become the go-to person in your industry. Content takes a lot of time, right? But the people that are going to thrive in the next few years are people that are going to build that authority online. And I always say this is something that I've said on the last podcast that I was featured on, is basically like you have let's say you have two options, right? You have a chiropractor A who has 1,000 Google reviews and 100,000 Instagram followers, or you have chiropractor B who has no Instagram and 100 Google reviews, or maybe 50 Google reviews. Who is the better chiropractor? You don't know, right? Based on skill. But what you do know is that chiropractor A, because he prioritizes marketing more, he's going to be looked at as more of an authoritative figure, and he's going to ultimately get the business. So I think that those things do matter. I don't think it matters as much about the product. Yes, a good product is good, but it's about how you package it that I think matters more. Let me ask you this one last question for you. Where do you think the market is headed? And what do you think? What changes are you seeing? So I would love to know.
That is a really good question. Short answer, I don't know, but I think AI agents are probably the next big thing. That's what I'm hearing and seeing. You probably heard or said something similar, where agents may become like companies. So you'd have like to put it in a human context, like an agent CEO, agent, I don't know about HR, but like agent operations, agent product, whatever. And it can go like 100,000 times faster than we can. And so it's just going to be like exponential growth curve when you're talking about like product iteration. So it's just a whole different ballgame there. But when it comes to communication, I think what you said is true. I think we'll have AI celebrities, if we don't already, and that will be perhaps a new market. I don't know if it'll cannibalize the existing market. I mean, maybe to some extent, but I just feel that we're always going to be connected to humans first. We're going to have a bias there. I'm okay with having that bias. I think that it'll be like a parallel track. So ideally, it's like a calculator. Like sometimes you run numbers in your head. Sometimes you use a calculator. Sometimes I'll prefer to have a human conversation. Sometimes I'll like check into sci-fi and watch this AI podcast. It's like, whoa, I think you'll probably need both. But yeah, it's hard to say like what is that going to mean for the market? Is there going to be like when crypto started becoming like more popular? Well, it came in like kind of waves, but particularly at the onset of the pandemic, there was a lot of talk on some channels about inflation's coming. They can't keep printing money like this. Bitcoin's going to be a hedge. Like it's more resilient. You should put your money there, and it's safe from the government. And I was thinking, and others were thinking too, well, we're people, the government are people. Like, can't they do the same thing? And like, is it with each kind of move you make, someone else is also making a move. So it's not very clear what that kind of ecosystem or what that landscape will look like. But I believe it will be net positive because once again, there's going to be that competition, that conflict, hopefully little c conflict, not big C conflict. And that forces you, it tests you, and you have to be tested. And it forces you to kind of, again, discover that extra gear you didn't know you have, push. And so I think for entrepreneurship, it's going to be an exciting time. For humans, it's going to be an exciting time. But it's a little unnerving, I'll be honest, or a little bit unsettling when like there's no anchor. Like there's no one that knows what's happening. I've talked to people, twice my age and much more experienced. And like, I'm like, because they lived through stuff that I didn't live through, that I read about in history books. And I'm like, is this the craziest time ever? Or is it just like our crazy time? And they're like, no, this is the craziest time ever. It's like, okay, because it feels like that. But, at least we're all in it together.
Right, and it's interesting because algorithms are now knowing us better than we know ourselves. Right, they're giving us some sort of content that perhaps we didn't have access to before, and confirming. Like, there's just a lot of strange things going on that the previous generations didn't have to deal with. What's interesting is actually funny. My grandma has somebody that's never done social media or like obviously grew up with any of that kind of stuff, and now she has 20,000 followers on
Wow,
TikTok, and
popular
now she's
grandma.
like, yeah, now she's like building out her personal brands. I don't know where I was going with that, but I just find it's an interesting time to be alive,
Oh, for
and I
sure.
think we're all kind of navigating it together. And I think nobody really knows what's going on or knows what they're doing. They're just kind of trying their best, and I think that's the only thing that you can ask for.
I did see kind of one pattern. I'm curious if you see it too, because you're in a slightly different, more mature space, dealing with celebrities and executives, social media profiles. At first, when social media first came on the scene, it was like rose-colored glasses. Like, everyone has a voice. We're gonna have like equality, no more bullies. Like, because before it was like very few of us could get on like in the newspaper or on like the established media kind of channels. You had to have connections oftentimes, and it was just, for better or worse, it was like less content. And then at first, when social media came out, we all had a voice, and then things seemed to kind of change. I don't know, several years later, where it seemed to be kind of adversarial. People are in silos, like reality silos, echo chambers, and it seemed kind of dystopian. Now I feel like it's kind of come through the other side, like you mentioned, with the algorithms showing us stuff that we didn't really know. It's like we didn't really like marketers in like the 60s were like magicians. And we didn't understand how psychology worked. Why am I attracted to this? Why do I want this brand? And now we kind of see, oh, like, we're emotional. This is how you can brainwash me. This is why I like this. And then we can kind of make value. Do I mind being brainwashed by Apple and wanting an iPhone? No, I'm okay with it. Like, I like the iPhone, whatever. But some people, maybe that's a deal breaker. And then if it's like something to do that's more extreme than like a purchase, I think it's good to understand. Well, it's probably always good to understand who we are and how we operate, and that none of us have a monopoly over reality. And it's kind of, I don't want to say it's like feeling through ourselves, like fumbling in the dark, but it's something that we kind of create together, and we need each other. And I don't think any of us is inherently better or has like some kind of, we each have like strengths and weaknesses. And I think social media is starting to flatten the curve a little bit with respect to celebrity, where it's like they're humans too, and they're getting tested too, and some of them are found to be worthy of that celebrity mantle, and some of them perhaps are not. And each of us too, maybe, oh, I want to dive into social media and become super famous, and it's hard, and maybe you're not going to be, maybe that's not your path, but it's good to kind of discover that too. So anyway, I feel that the openness and a bit more transparency is kind of giving us more data to find out who we are, and then work into whatever phase 2.0 of humanity.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point. Especially people that I find that people, when they start creating content and they start kind of getting out of their shell and their bubble, they kind of start to unlock different parts of themselves. They're like, oh, wow, I'm actually putting myself out there. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, people are gravitating towards me. People actually care about what I have to say. Oh, like this is, it's just, I mean, you're right. You're right. I think it's a very cool time to be alive. And we have everything on the palm of our hands. This right here it can change your life completely. You just have to figure out how to use it. You could either scroll through social media all day looking at political posts or whatever is going to get you upset, or you can actually just use this tool to connect with like-minded people, talk about things that you're passionate about, and there's people that are going to like you and there's people that are not going to like you, but just, you're not creating content for those people. You're creating content for the people that care about what you have to say. You're creating content for the people that are for yourself, because you want to change your life. And I think that's kind of what you need to focus on.
That is a big point you dropped there, that I discovered somewhat recently, was that ultimately you're kind of responsible, or at least to a large degree, over the life that you live. So oftentimes when I found myself in like conflict, someone wasn't thinking the way that I wanted them to think, or acting the way I wanted them to act, I felt that I had to change that. I had to convince them that they're wrong, that I'm right, or something like that. And I'm not saying that there isn't room for like negotiation or making a case for what you believe in, but I think it's also okay, speaking of pivoting earlier, to like let people be and kind of curate to some extent your life the way that you want it to be. Do you like this food? Don't then eat it. If you don't eat it. If you like this content, watch it. If you don't watch it. If it makes you some way and that leads to low productivity after, maybe track that and see just like you would food. Like, if I start my day with cake, how does that work out for me? And or do I, start it with rotten food? Like, it's like I spoke to this gentleman who he basically helped me see that your diet on social media should kind of mirror your diet in life, like food. You wouldn't sit down and eat like a bowl of sugar. And so similar with content, if you're a little bit more intentional with your feed and how you choose to spend your time, uh, it can be a great tool. And once I kind of saw that, a lot of the negatives of social media seem to kind of dissipate or disappear. And it's mostly like entrepreneurship for me because that's where I'm kind of putting myself.
Right. Like if you don't want to see, I don't know, Instagram models and political posts, like don't engage with that kind of stuff. And then the algorithm won't show you that. And then, like you said, you've started to engage with more entrepreneurship posts and that, entrepreneurial posts, and that is what the algorithm is going to feed. So the algorithm is basically just a mirror of what you actually want to see deep down inside. And I think that's troubling for people to actually come to that conclusion because that requires personal responsibility, and that's not, for whatever reason, we've kind of strayed away from that. You know, I think that the older generation is seeing at least my generation, and they're seeing like, hey, listen, back in the day, we used to have. If you made a mistake, you would have to pay for that mistake, or some things are your fault. Like it's not the world's fault. It's not XYZ's fault. Like it's your fault, and you should take responsibility in that. But there's power in that because if you know that you could change something, and you know that if something is, I like the way I look at it. I read this book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I would recommend any young man or any man to read it personally because so yeah, it's just about everything is your fault, and if it's not your fault, well then blaming somebody else for it is not going to help you. Therefore, it's better for you to take responsibility for that because then you could change it. And so, I'm a big proponent of that, especially as I've become. Obviously, that's the only way to be in entrepreneurship. That's the way I've been when I was working a 9 to 5. So I think there's power in that, and I don't think giving power away to external forces is the answer.
No, I agree. And I think just in your day to day too, you're getting data from the environment. So then you could ask yourself, like, what's the reason for this data? Because I think the majority of the time it has a lot to do with you, and you just don't realize it because we're kind of blind to ourselves, how we show up. And kind of the beauty of that is there's this whole discovery arc there where you can kind of pick that up. And social media, I think, speeds up the pace of that. But yeah, I think if you're showing up in the way, if you're self-aware and showing up authentically, I think a lot of that gets reflected back to you the majority of the time because it just doesn't work really. Because the opposite is true. If someone wanted to make you feel bad, for example, and you're not feeling bad, like let's say you worked out, whatever, you're feeling pretty good, settled, you're getting after it with your company, treating people around you with respect. And I come at you and I'm like a jerk trying to make you feel bad about wearing a hat that says LA or wearing a black shirt or whatever. And you're just like unfazed, like authentically unfazed, not trying to pretend that you're unfazed. And that's like almost like on an animal level, like a primal level, you can like pick up on that. Everyone can. I can, the audience can, or whatever. And then that just becomes a mirror coming right back at me. And then I get that reflection. And it's weird because it comes in like, as far as I can understand, like there's a couple different layers, but there's like something you feel even before you like consciously are aware of it. And so then I get like really embarrassed that I look like small, petty, whatever, weak. I wasn't able to change you, whatever. And then, so it's like, let's never do that again. And so basically, and I don't even know that it go that far, but basically what I'm saying is if you're living authentically in your example there, and my example of you there, um, your environment kind of reflects that back to you because anything else wouldn't really work there. It's like oil and water. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of just the power of being confident, power of just being comfortable in your own skin. I think that's also really important. As you mentioned, like nobody can make you feel bad unless you allow it, essentially.
Yeah, great book, Extreme Ownership. That's also, it's like stoicism too. It's empowering. Because if the world's bad, that's kind of depressing because it's like I can't really change the world. That's but if it's like the world's a fair jungle, and you can choose how you show up to it.
Yeah, stoicism is really 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 important. Like you said, like Marcus Aurelius said, like you have no control over external factors. You only have control of basically your mindset and how you look at things. And you could lose your job and you could say, man, this sucks. This is the worst thing to ever happen to me. Or you can say, you know what, this is a great opportunity to reassess, to reconsider how am I going to do things. Getting dropped off in the Middle East / Europe, Cyprus is kind of in there, kind of changed my perspective on a lot of things and allowed me to become a lot more stoic and allowed me to detach a lot more. And because when you're in a new country, you're basically figuring out what it is, how things operate. You also, when I went there, I didn't have a job. I was just living. I had enough savings, but still, like it just really changed my perspective on a lot of things, unlike things that I can't control and things that I couldn't control. And ultimately, I just think you keep putting one foot in front of the other, try not to react emotionally, and things will eventually work out, and they have.
Yeah, it seems like you're on the right path. Well, thank you once again for chatting with us. It's really interesting to hear your perspective and see some of the work that you've been doing for executives and celebrities and athletes, et cetera, managing their social profiles, sharing your tips with us on what tools we can use and maybe what to expect around the corner, and sharing where we can follow you. So yeah, keep it up and look forward to seeing what's next for you.
Great. Thank you guys so much for having me, and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you.